Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new, exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Welcome all to Season 4 of FemLead Podcast. We discuss career breakthrough, and we have new guests, new stories, and new inspiration to share. Today, my next guest is an empowerment champion, working to provide girls and young women with the skills to build the future of work. Dora Palfi is the co-founder and CEO of ImagiLabs, an EdTech company making products that empower girls with the skills, confidence, and community to create with technology. She has a bachelor's degree in neuroscience with a minor in computer science from New York University, Abu Dhabi, and has studied human-computer interactions at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Dora worked as a developer at Morgan Stanley, as a UX designer at Cisco, and has substantial experience teaching programming to children and teenagers, as well as advocating for women in technology. She's originally from Hungary, and true to her fictional namesake Dora the Explorer, living, studying, and working in 10 countries across 4 continents. In addition to her work to bring technology closer to girls, she's also a yoga instructor, bringing mindfulness closer to engineers. We already have a super nice introduction here. Dora has also been recognized on the Forbes 30 Under 30 2021 list as one of Europe's leading social entrepreneurs and as a Cartier Women's Initiative Fellow in 2020. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest for the day, Dora Palfi. Hello, Dora, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here and to finally make this happen.
Exactly. We've been discussing this for a few months because we've met in different instances. We have also been discussing at the Nordic Women in Tech Awards about making this interview a possibility. Dora is very busy, and she also has a very cool startup to tell us more about. And I think it's really a story about how you can take an idea and transform it into a movement that can inspire girls and teenagers to code. And I would love if you can tell us more about ImagiLabs and where are you now as our first question to begin with.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much. So we like to say that at ImagiLabs, we are bringing a fresh take on EdTech, gaming, and social impact. These are sort of 3 things that we are combining to achieve our goals. And before I dive more into the details, I like to start with this exercise in logic. So if we can agree that technology is our future, and I believe a lot of your listeners are probably from the tech industry, so they would agree. And we also, unfortunately, agree that women are not equally involved in tech today. So in the EU, men make up about 87% of all the ICT workforce. And when it comes to actual developers, it's even a higher percentage. So from here, it sort of logically follows, if tech is the future and women are not equally involved in tech, then we don't have an equal chance to shape the future. And so this is what I wanted to change, and then sort of where to tackle this problem, right? This is a problem on so many different levels, and also an opportunity to change this in so many different levels. Does it come to women in the boardroom, women investing, women leading companies, women going from university to becoming developers? But actually the area that I was really excited about focusing on was at the much earlier stage. So it turns out that until around the age of 12, girls actually have a very similar interest and also confidence to boys, that they could create with tech and they could, be a scientist, they could be a programmer. And it's in the early teen years when most girls lose this interest. I think in Sweden particularly, this number is something like 50% of girls lose the interest between the age of 11 and 16 that they could do tech or for technology. And so, yeah, this is what we set out to change with ImagiLabs. And it all started with a research project I had at university that sort of eventually turned into the startup.
Mm-hmm. That's super. I love the fact that you gave us all the context about the problem behind what your startup is trying to solve. Tell us a bit more about what is ImagiLabs. What should people expect when they see the logo, when they go on the website? What is it that you are focusing on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So essentially at ImagiLabs, like you introduced, that was a sort of broad introduction that we have tools and a community for girls to become creators with technology. So our products span across the physical and the digital. So we have the Imagi app, which is sort of like a social sandbox game that teaches coding through pixel art. And it has, like we mentioned, a really positive community. And then this experience is enhanced by the Imagi charm. So here's the box of it. And then I have one Imagi charm here. So this is the little gadget that you can customize through coding. So that actually your coding projects will come to life. And then finally, we also have sort of educational offerings or opportunity for our tools to be used in the classroom. And so that is an additional pillar to what we do. So we don't just provide like games and toys for home use for kids to engage with coding, but also for nonprofit organizations, after school programs, and various sort of group settings in which kids would be learning to code.
Very interesting. Thanks for showing the product as well and explaining the app. If people are watching on YouTube, they'll figure out that the Imagi charm looks a bit like a Tamagotchi, if I'm not mistaken, right? So it reminds us of that area. And tell us a bit about the number of users, engagement. Can you share a few numbers with us?
Yes, sure. So I guess what's super, super important for us is that, like you said, thinking about engagement and the fact that, so over the last year, we had about 12,000 registered users, but out of those, we actually have like true super users who have been coding with us for over a year now. And I think like, we're still at an early stage where oftentimes it's not just about like the large numbers, but about like individual stories. So having girls who have gone from not knowing anything about coding, now being able to sort of like mentor new users, even hold their own coding workshops, like see them explain what for loops are to other users, have been like extremely powerful for us. And in terms of like also our growth, so we have the Imagi Charm, right, the product that we sell. Actually like 80% of our market has been in the US. So that's our biggest market, but we're based in Sweden. So Sweden is our second biggest, and we're also present all across Europe. And when it comes to educational partners, we actually held workshops in 16 countries. So from Brazil to the UAE to Latvia. So it's been really across the globe.
That's great to hear. If anyone is looking to invest in the future of girls and education, I think they should check out the story of ImagiLabs and consider reaching out to you. I know that the start of such a journey, especially if it's tackling important issues such as education, is it's very easy to talk about, but it's very hard to implement. I'm sure that you are also trying some strategic educational projects where you're trying to enter in the US market, for example, in the K-12 setup, right? So I'm guessing there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make it even more known and
right, of course.
Yeah. So if anyone has any tips for that, feel free to contact Dora and share some insights with her. When it comes to deciding to become an entrepreneur, you said this was a student project. Tell us a bit about how did it become a business?
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't one of those people who wanted to become an entrepreneur. And in fact, like growing up in Hungary, I think the idea of like being an entrepreneur, it didn't really exist, or it wasn't cool. Like having your own business was kind of just like, that's a shady thing to do. And then when I came to Sweden to study for my master's degree, I mean, Stockholm was just like buzzing with entrepreneurship. I had a few entrepreneurship courses. I like to say I was tricked into studying entrepreneurship because for my scholarship, for my engineering course, I was forced to take a few courses on business. But then what happened is that I had this product idea or project idea. And the more I heard about startups and I started to attend local events and meetups, it seemed like, whoa, wow, you could actually just turn this into something commercially viable and have impact at scale. And so it wasn't like from one day to another. It was more just like, I used to be the type of person who like always had a million hobbies and was dividing my time between so many different activities. And then suddenly there was this one thing this idea that just like kept taking up more and more space, and it made it easy for me to say no to other things. And then I started to like drag some of my friends into it, like, hey, could you help out with this prototype, or you're a 3D like artist, could you design like how this could look like? And then it just started to take up more and more space. And then at some point, we reached a point where like, okay, we really want to do this. And then I think a month or two later, we got our like first customer who wanted to pay us, and they were like, okay, I guess now we really need to actually make a company so we could like invoice for this. So, you know, it really was just like a gradual process, and we always just climbed the next month and as it came.
And I love the story of how it was a natural progression from an idea, because if you look, for example, at the Female Invest and their start as having, you know, some classes or courses on investment, and then people saying, I would pay for this. It's, you know, very similar in terms of you created something that brought value and someone said, well, I would actually pay to have access to this. It's not just about knowing that the technology could exist or the concept can exist, but I would pay to have it in my hands and use it myself, or their children if they were parents, right? I think that's very, very relevant to discuss a bit. Maybe what do you think would be a good advice for someone that has this maybe lack of confidence to go for something that could become commercially viable, even though the concept is actually accepted within a community? Do you have any sort of stories about confidence, fear of unknown, and how did you decide to push that forward and start as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, of course. So these are really, really great points. So yeah, for us, the first customer was this organization who had like a program for girls to learn coding. And then they didn't just buy one, right? Like they paid for like 30 upfront and like a whole course. So I guess when it comes to confidence, I mean, of course, it's actually good, I think, to not be overconfident, or this is like an ongoing debate in sort of like the startup investment community, right? That like investors might refrain from investing in women because they're like, oh, they are not as visionary, when in reality they are just more realistic and are really weighing the risks that they're going to take. So I mean, I think it both has a good and a bad side to it, like being a bit more sort of like careful. And I think in the early days, like, again, what I would say is always just like climb the next mountain. So I think like don't get paralyzed by all the challenges that could come up. Sort of just like think of it as a learning process, and like what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, we used to joke with this, and I guess we still do sometimes, like what's the worst thing that can happen? We'll have to go and get like regular jobs, and that's really what could happen. So I think like having this approach to it, that like, oh, I mean, especially in our case, we're like young, just coming out of school, like what is there to lose for us? Nothing. It's just really so much learning to be done. So I think if you look at it as the learning process, as opposed to like, am I gonna succeed or fail? Then you really remove that pressure and give yourself an opportunity to just like try it out and see where it takes you.
Super, super useful advice, and also very honest that it also happened to you naturally, that it became a commercial viable product and it took off. And I would like to ask on this note about your target group, because you are target as an end user, teenagers, young women, girls that are interested in coding, or that would like to enter the tech scene with this application and the product. But what about their parents? Because I'm guessing a lot of the young girls that you are targeting will not have the financial means to buy necessarily an ImagiCharm. Is there a way that you have thought about the parents and how to promote the product, how to make it more viable for parents to find out about it and so on?
Yes, so this is a very, very interesting question, and like very relevant to anyone who is looking to make a children's product. And we also went through like quite a bit of like interviewing iterations with the product, seeing the engagement. And initially we thought that our target audience would be a bit older, like you're saying, like teenager, 12 to 16. But actually, the more we sort of like tested and understood our opportunity, we started to focus on a younger audience, like 8 to 12. And there it became much more clear that it must be the parent who is the purchasing decision maker. At teenagers, it's a bit different. They might already have their own like opportunities to spend money. And like you're saying, yes, like you really, really have to address the parents too. So anyone like building products or services for children has to essentially cater to both an end user and the paying customer. And so, we just have to be fully aware of it, that we need to have a buy-in from both, which is hard. But, we're not doing this because it would be easy, but it's just like you have to be really honest about it, that you need to get the buy-in from both ends, essentially.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to some maybe discoveries you've made about Gen Z, because you are targeting a young audience, you are targeting girls and adolescents, teenagers. What are some interesting data that you can share with us about their interest in STEM, about the way they use the app?
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, of course, like no brainers, but like the audience is like such digital natives, like, and when you come from like a UX background, like I do, and you really value user testing, but it's super important that you test with the right audience, because I don't know, some versions of the app would be like very non-intuitive for adults, or adults wouldn't like it, but actually it works super well for kids. So I think there is just simply like, they have like such better understanding or like ability to sort of like guess how things would work as opposed to adults is very interesting. And I mean, something that's like, I mean, it's both a learning and something that we are like aware of is of course like privacy and security. But it seems like this young audience, like they're growing up with like an online presence, and they're actually pretty good at like keeping their identity like private, so like not disclosing their identity, but being engaged in a community. And so that is really important for our like success, because with such young audience, we can't like expect to have like real identities revealed. It's actually much safer not to, but we have to like, we want to have a strong community. So that has been an interesting process for us to figure out like what we can do on our own platform that fosters community, but make sure that there is like security, and how to like manage a community. But yeah, so far for us, it's been extremely positive, and rather sort of like encouraging community and the users able to like have their limits set and not reveal anything that would be too sensitive information.
That's great to hear. And indeed, you are targeting a digital native audience, as we call it now. And it's really interesting to understand what are some of the main challenges you consider when you know that your audience is more prone to using the digital product since their early childhood. Tell us a bit about the team behind ImagiLabs, because you say we are building and we are testing. Tell us a bit about the team setup. Tell me a bit about how you created the co-founding team, and what are some of your tips about making it work from a student project to an actual business?
Yeah, so I mean, I was lucky to have like one of my best friends, Beatrice, be living in Sweden, and I've known her from NYU Abu Dhabi, and she actually had a background in hardware engineering or like electrical engineering. So it was very, very like logical to just ask her to start helping out with ImagiLabs. And then we also had another friend from university, Paula, who was a software engineer, and so we reached out to Paula if she could help, just like part-time, like starting to prototype the app. And I would say, just like I said, it was a very like gradual process for us. So it wasn't like asking someone to like jump ship right away, but like having the opportunity for just like test out the waters and really for months, like see if this is something they want to do. And then, so for example, Paula joined us in later. She used to be like full-time working in Hong Kong, but still putting in like 10 hours of work into our first version of the app. So I guess like it was very much like my personal network and like having extremely smart people as friends whom I could sort of ask if they wanted to help out with ImagiLabs. But I guess when it comes to team, it's still like we have like complementing skills, which is obviously extremely important. But I think for us, what has been the biggest is just being really aligned on the vision and why we're doing this, and being motivated from like by the same like problem to be solved. And so I think that has helped us through a lot. So I think that's like one tip for me, just like being extremely aligned with the co-founders, and then also of course like aiming for complementary skills. And then I guess for the rest of the team, like, yeah, or just like in general, like now we've been growing, with a few more employees, and it's always like super impressive when you can like find people who are just probably a lot smarter than you at the things that you are hiring them to do. And so yeah, that is like an exciting journey to go down on, and I'm very, very happy and lucky that we have met some people who have like, really fit into the team.
Definitely. And to complement a bit the mission of the company, it really reminds me, or it gives me this idea of bigger than self mission and vision, that, they're just people who relate to that so much and that want to be part of the journey from the beginning, or they want to join as the company is scaling. And it's simply something that you feel when people get together and they're like, we know why we're here. The co-founding team is aligned. We know that we have to accomplish big things and we are starting small, but we're very ambitious. And it's really good to hear that you found people that are aligned with this mission and vision, because it's to a certain extent something most of us strive for, to go to work and feel like we're fulfilled with the mission and the vision of the organization. So congrats on that. I think it's super, super nice. Tell us a little bit about scaling. How do you tackle the scaling part of the business? Now you're talking about adding new members to the team, and I would be curious to know, what do you see as challenges, barriers, something that you want to reflect on?
I mean, I think it's, again, just referring back to the same question, it's like always just get through the challenges that you're facing now, sort of. So yeah, there's like so many difficulties and so many difficult problems to solve that honestly, if I had known that all of this was going to happen, it would have been probably really scary to want to start a company. But then like as you're moving forward, you're also like more and more prepared to solve them. And so I mean, in this journey, first we're part of Sting, which is this incubator here in Stockholm that's really well known and also has like incredible mentors who are really good for our like first phase of the business. And then we were able to get some like really good angel investors on board. So for example, Eros, who's the former CMO of Discord, is one of our angel investors, but also an advisor. We have another angel investor who is one of the sharks, so like the Hungarian edition of Shark Tank, and had built a company from nothing to 700 employees. So I think like as you kind of like move forward, you start getting these mentors and advisors around, and like they really help you tackle most of the scaling problems. So I would say like it again comes down to like like people, resources, talent, but also not just from like the team side, but like the advisors that you're able to get to be around you.
Super interesting, and also very important to know that everything you're talking about is also backed up by investors and by teams of experienced professionals who give you advice, because it is obviously something that is a normal progression as the company scales, that you want to have good advice within your ecosystem. So definitely don't think that everything happens out of a sudden without any sort of help. Okay, tell us a bit about then the experience in pitching and going to those investment meetings. Tell us a little bit about your experience with it. Any tips? Have you been in any situations where you were surprised, or you were, you learned something that you think is valuable to share?
I mean, I think one thing is that, of course, as a founder, it's usually pretty hard to empathize with how it is to hear about your business for the first time, because you know it so well. And so I think that's also something I struggle with, that, I assume maybe there's some things that people would understand. So like really making the language simple. And so when I went on the Hungarian edition of Shark Tank, I super appreciated the pitch coaching there, because I think that was the first time where I had like sort of like a very professional person who's like, there's going to be 1 million people watching this, and these people like don't work in tech. So, you have to make this like so simple that everyone will understand. And it really stuck with me, some of the ways in which we like rephrase the things that I say, because you just end up saying such like specific jargon that like doesn't resonate with people. So I think like some of the learnings have just been around like how to make it simple. Then I think again, maybe just getting to the gender perspective, like I've gotten this feedback, and I am aware that like you have to be a bit better at like bragging or like phrasing things in a way where like go with the strength, go with what you've already figured out. And I think like I have a natural tendency to like definitely not oversell. And so that's also something I think you have to learn quite a bit. And, you know, it's not about like making things seem bigger than they are, but just like really emphasizing the things that have worked well. So I think like these two have been like really big learnings, sort of like really simplify the language and then like focus or make sure that like you really outline the strengths and the positives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for our audience to understand a bit more about your day-to-day, how much of your, let's say, month or week, however you wanna look at it, how much time do you spend on preparing for the next fundraising round? How much time do you spend doing stakeholder management and talking to investors and mentors about the business?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I actually do track my time. So that like every week for the past more than 3 years now, I have like sort of an outline of what percentage I spent on like product and sales and fundraising. And of course, like fundraising that comes more like in waves, right? Like there's times when you practically don't do any of it. Like maybe you just like write your monthly update to your investors. And then there's times when you like spend 80% or whatever on that part. And so yeah, I guess like there's no like right or wrong way, but I think the general sort of like startup knowledge goes that like the more you can be focused on it all at once, the better. But I would say in my experience, you know, life might not work that way always, and you know, it will probably take longer than you first expected. So yeah.
Yeah, I think taking some extra time to prepare for the pitch, to also do the management of, you know, discussions and everything. It's also part of the actual fundraising process. And I feel that, like you said, it's always longer than it seems if you don't take in the time that you spend preparing emails, discussions, negotiations. So definitely something to consider as well as part of the entrepreneurial game. It's not really all about creating an app or testing the product. It's also about selling it, explaining all of the features to someone that's not necessarily tech invested as much. So super, super relevant advice. What is next then for ImagiLabs? What do you have prepared for 2022 and also maybe for next year's?
Yeah. So I think we touched upon it earlier that we sort of have these end users, but then we have like two different ways to reach them. Like one is through their parents or like the consumer market, and one is through the educational market. And something exciting that happened, we received two larger grants back in December. So one through One Young World's competition that was sponsored by Deloitte, and one from actually the city of Stockholm. And both of these grants were for us to be able to upgrade our educational platform. And so that's really exciting. We've been working on this so that we can actually provide like a more like classroom suited platform. So yeah, very much looking forward to launching our sort of a new educational platform. And then actually also in the workings, the completely like new version of our app and game is also in the making, but that will not come out in this like 2022, but only the year after. And I guess like one thing that I am looking forward to, and of course, like, so we launched our product like during COVID, right? And we have a physical product. And I mean, it's not saying that like it's been impossible to use it because we've found ways around it. But whenever like the situation was a bit better with the virus, so for example, we could go to like Comic-Con Stockholm, we had an amazing like marketing opportunity, or you know, we were able to host an event at the Technical Museum in Stockholm. Like I'm really looking forward to like sort of like the world opening up that way. So for the first time, we can really take advantage of sort of like physical marketing and in-person events and like spreading brand awareness that way.
That's super, super important and relevant to mention here as well. Follow Dora and see where she's going. And if you happen to be in the city, or if you happen to go to the same event, go check out their product and also see how you can help. I really like to follow your journey. I've actually been following it since the beginning of time, because somehow somebody tagged you somewhere on LinkedIn, and then we got connected, and then we started being in similar circles here in the Nordics. It was really a pleasure to see your journey. We've also done an event together with students in New York, which was really fantastic because it was such a, you know, out of my ordinary day to day, but then it was really relevant for them. And then it was sponsored by ImagiLabs. So a lot of opportunities remote, but also a lot of opportunities offline to meet and interact with people that could really have an impact. Best of luck in both instances. I think you have a great product. And I also know that you are really having a great mission. So it's really fantastic to see all of that. I wanna continue this interview now towards the end about discussing a little bit your mental health and how do you take care of yourself as an entrepreneur. You are a yoga instructor, I mentioned it earlier, but tell us a little bit about what is your, I don't know if routine, but what is your advice for everyone that is an entrepreneur about taking care of yourself?
Yes, very good point. So yeah, you mentioned already that I'm a yoga teacher, and I actually became an instructor not much before starting my startup. And I think that has played a huge role in sort of like me having like a really steady mental state, in the sense that, like, you know, even if things got extremely busy, I can't cancel on the class that I'm teaching in last minute. So I have to show up, and then that puts me in the right mindset. I think something that I recently learned is like knowing what type of person you are. Like, are you more driven by sort of like internal motivation, or do you sort of like need external validation as well? And so for me, I'm very much like driven by like internal motivation. So I get just really motivated by having my long-term goals, and then from that, like breaking it down into shorter term, and then my weekly goals and my daily goals, and like checking off my to-do list. And I feel fully like satisfied if I feel like I did my best here. So for me, like that structure works really well. And I think when it comes to like finding also just like mental like balance and work-life balance, for me it has helped to also just have like sort of hobbies and activities outside of work that I really like care for, and like learning how to just like let go of like the work stress completely. And so yeah, I mean, I think everyone has to like find their own. Like for me, yoga is one of those, running, and having goals around like these other activities really helps me just, you know, not think that, oh, work is the only thing that exists. And so therefore, if work is not going well, then everything is going wrong. So I think like having the other things in focus as well can really help, just like having a good mental health. So like, you know, for running, like I ran my first marathon last year, and it was just like so much fun that I could accomplish something outside of ImagiLabs as well.
That sounds really great. It's also about differentiating between your private life and your personal life, and don't identify with one role that you have in life, which is the professional
Right.
hat. And that's also something that we discuss a lot online, and something that comes up in friend discussion for myself. You know, how do we take care of ourselves without giving away our professional side, but not identifying all of our surroundings with that one role? Super relevant example. So I hope everybody will consider, if they don't have a hobby, to at least consider yoga as a start point, because it seems like it's a great place to start as well, or anything else that can make you not focus on only your role at work. Is there anything looking back that you would have done differently?
Yeah, so I mean, I generally am the type of person who thinks, right, like everything that has happened has taken me to where I am today, and I'm really happy here. So I don't like to like dwell too much on the past. I think one thing that like we have learned, or like I have learned also in the startup journey, is that and we talk about this a lot with the team, is oftentimes like you have this gut feeling that something is not going to be right, but you kind of just like wait to see, oh, maybe it will be. And you know, when you're in a startup, you should be fast. So I think just like going a bit faster with like gut decisions could have been like saving us time, you know. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to be more intentional about.
That is super relevant advice, to kind of trust yourself in the process and not give everything to someone else, or see it as an external thought. Thank you. This was super relevant. And I do want to wrap up our interview. We're going to go very soon to the final Fire 5 questions. Tell us a little bit about, or maybe one final thought. Let's wrap it up with one final thought that you want to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, I mean, I always love to take these opportunities to just like tell everyone that, you know, you all have the opportunity to make a difference when it comes to gender equality in the tech industry and in our world. And so, you know, if you have a younger sister, a daughter, a niece, or just a neighbor, you can always encourage them to take pride in their brains and their creativity, and encourage them to try coding. So of course, like the Imagi app and the Imagi charm is one great place to start. There's several others. So we have, for example, a blog post on our website on ImagiLabs.com with, I think, 8 free coding games and also like free resources for educators. So, check these out or check other tools out and just make sure that the girls feel like coding is a space for them.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Dora. It was really a pleasure to have you here. I'm very happy we could do this interview, and I'm very happy we could hear more about your story and the details of being an entrepreneur and having such a mission-driven startup. Let's go to the file 5 fire questions, where the first question is, what is one book you think everyone should read?
I think Grit by Angela Duckworth is an excellent read.
Fantastic. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
So I don't know if it's an advice, but I was told I don't have to become a doctor when I was finishing high school. And that was essentially translating to, you don't have to do what others expect of you. And that has been extremely important for me.
Super. Who is your role model?
Yeah, this is a really hard one, but I think I do think of Melinda Gates as one excellent role model because of how she approaches like doing good in the world, like actually not just, talking the talk, but walking the walk, doing her research and then implementing strategies to create impact.
Awesome. And if you were to have another career, what would you choose to do?
Oh, well, so, I mean, obviously I'm extremely passionate about education. So I thought about, I could be just teaching, become a teacher. I think that would be a fun and very fulfilling career to have as well.
Fantastic. And lastly, if you could change places with someone, who would it be and why?
Again, I probably would not want to change places, but I thought about this question and I think, if I had to switch with someone, maybe I could switch for someone like Jeff Bezos and just utilize their wealth and influence to just target one of the most pressing issues that I care about. So donate or, work more on gender equality, on education or climate change or AI safety. So some of these topics, have the resources to address them all.
Thank you so much, Dora. This has been a great interview. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us today, and best of luck with ImagiLabs.
Thank you, and best of luck with the rest of the podcast. Thank you for doing this work.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. Stay tuned for more interviews with inspiring role models.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.